Prague, May 27, 1942. A Czechoslovak soldier named Josef Gabčík stepped into the road, dropped the raincoat hiding his submachine gun, and aimed at the architect of the Holocaust from just a few feet away. Reinhard Heydrich's open Mercedes had slowed for the corner. The most feared man in occupied Europe was a dead man, if the gun fired. Gabčík pulled the trigger. Click. The gun had jammed. Here's the uncomfortable part. That weapon is on this list, and it is still not the worst submachine gun of the Second World War. 7 guns, ranked from worst to best. The gun at the bottom was such garbage that the men who carried it might have been safer without it. And the gun at the top terrified its enemies so badly that they stripped it from the dead, printed manuals for it, and handed it to their own soldiers. We'll get to that. The countdown starts at the bottom. And the bottom is ugly. First, understand what a submachine gun was really for. It fired pistol bullets, fast, at close range. It ruled the spaces where war gets personal. Trenches, stairwells, jungle trails, places where you can hear the other man breathing, and the first one to fill the air with lead walks away. Every major power built one. Some worked, some killed the men holding them, and one of these 7 was invented by a 24-year-old amateur in a backyard workshop, a gun his own army rejected, then begged for. He shows up near the top of this list. First, the bottom. Number 7, the Japanese Type 100. Start with soldiers falling out of the sky. December 1944. Japanese paratroopers drop onto the American airfields at Leyte in the Philippines, many of them carrying the Type 100, the only submachine gun Japan ever mass-produced. And mass-produced is generous. America turned out over 2 million submachine guns during the war. Japan built fewer than 30,000 of these. Some historians say fewer than 10,000. The Type 100 fired the 8mm Nambu round, a pistol cartridge so weak that a man could soak up a hit and keep moving. The feed system was needlessly complicated and jammed constantly, and Japan's poor wartime ammunition made it worse. By 1944, the guns left the factory with crude welds and half-finished stocks because there was no time and no steel left. The horrific part is not the gun, it is the trust. Paratroopers jumped into the middle of an American airbase, surrounded, outnumbered, and squeezed the trigger on a weapon that answered with silence. Most of those men were dead within days. The Type 100 was too weak, too rare, and too late. A miniature of Japan's whole war, stamped in bad steel. But here's the thing about the Type 100. It rarely killed the man carrying it. The next gun did, again and again. Number 6, the British Sten. Yes, the gun that jammed in Gabčík's hands in Prague. After Dunkirk, Britain had lost mountains of equipment and needed guns immediately. The Sten was the answer, a crude tube of stamped metal that a bicycle workshop could build for roughly the price of a decent meal. Britain and its allies produced close to 4 million. They got what they paid for. Drop a loaded Sten, and the bolt could jar loose and fire, sometimes emptying a full burst into whoever stood nearby. British reports from 1943 to 1945 blamed the Sten for roughly 1 in 5 small arms accidents in some units. Men bled out in training fields, in trucks, in barracks, killed by a gun that nobody was aiming. And its magazine, copied from a flawed German design, misfed constantly. That is what betrayed Gabčík 3 feet from Heydrich. And yet resistance fighters across occupied Europe treasured the Sten, because you could bury it in a garden and build it in a shed. When it fired, it did its job. The problem was that little word, when. America looked at Britain's $10 gun and decided to build its own budget killer. It very nearly repeated the same mistake. Number 5, the M3 grease gun. American soldiers took one look at this stamped steel tube with its wire stock and named it after a mechanic's grease gun. It was not a compliment. The M3 cost about half the price of a Thompson and took half the time to build. Around 700,000 were made. Then, in 1944, the gun started dying. The cocking handle was made from inferior steel. Drop the gun on its right side and the handle could snap clean off, leaving a soldier in a firefight holding several pounds of useless metal, rear sights bent, parts failed. But here's why the grease gun climbs past the Sten. America fixed it. The improved M3A1 threw the fragile handle away completely. Soldiers simply pulled the bolt back with a finger through a hole in the bolt itself. Cruder, uglier, unbreakable. Tank crews loved how it stowed inside a cramped hull, and they kept it for almost 50 years. Grease guns were still riding in American tanks during the Gulf War in 1991. It started as a problem. It ended as a legend of stubborn simplicity. The gun the M3 was built to replace was its exact opposite. Gorgeous, expensive, and heavy enough to make strong men curse. Number 4, the Thompson. The The Tommy gun came to the war with blood already on it. This was the gangster gun of the 1920s, the weapon of Chicago massacres. Early in the war, one M1928 cost around $200, months of a soldier's pay for a single gun. It weighed over 10 pounds empty. Loaded with heavy .45 ammunition, a Marine on Guadalcanal was hauling close to 13 pounds through jungle heat that rotted the boots off men's feet. So why does it rank this high? Because it worked. Rain, mud, coral sand. The Thompson kept firing where cheaper guns choked. The fat .45 slug hit like a sledgehammer and dropped men where they stood. Soldiers cursed the weight, then slept beside the gun anyway, because in an ambush at 10 yards it never asked questions and it never went quiet. The Thompson's sins were money and weight, not blood. On this list, that is the difference between the bottom half and the top. Across the lines, German soldiers carried something that looked like it came from a different decade. Lighter, sleeker, all steel and plastic. It had one flaw that surfaced at the worst possible moments. Number 3. The German MP40. This was the first mass-produced submachine gun with no wood at all. A folding stock, modern stamped steel, about 1.1 million made. Its slow rate of fire, around 500 rounds per minute, made it frighteningly controllable. An experienced soldier could hold an entire burst on one man's chest. The flaw was the magazine. Its single-feed design misfed so often that German soldiers loaded 28 rounds instead of 32 just to ease the spring. Worse, new men grabbed the magazine like a front grip, which tilted it slightly and jammed the gun in the middle of a firefight. There are few worse sounds in war than a click when you needed a burst. Then came the Eastern Front. Dirt and slush poured into the MP40 through its open ejection port, and the bare metal barrel burned through gloves and skin. And the most telling detail of all, German soldiers in the East began throwing away their MP40S for a captured Soviet gun. Remember that. It decides number 1. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the world, an army settled the reliability question with a bucket of mud, and one gun humiliated the famous names on this list. Number 2. The Australian Owen gun. Evelyn Owen was 24 years old, an amateur inventor from Wollongong who built his prototype at home. The Australian Army turned him away. Then the war reached the Pacific and desperation opened doors. On September 30th, 1941, at the Long Bay Rifle Range, the Owen was tested head-to-head against the Thompson and the Sten. Officials buried the guns in sand and drowned them in mud. Only one still fired, the Owen. The design looked wrong. The magazine stuck straight up out of the top of the gun. That was the genius. Gravity helped feed every round, and dirt fell out of the action instead of settling into it. A sealed compartment kept mud away from the bolt entirely. In New Guinea, soldiers crawled through swamps that devoured everything, and the Owen came up firing. Australian troops named it the Digger's Darling. New Zealand units traded away their expensive Thompsons just to get one. Only about 45,000 were ever made, and men competed for them. The kid the Army ignored had built the most reliable submachine gun of the entire war. So why isn't the Owen number 1? Because reliability wins firefights, and the last gun on this list helped win the war. Number 1. The Soviet PPSH-41. Stalingrad, winter 1942. Men fought for single rooms, for staircases, for the space between a doorway and a wall. Into that meat grinder, the Soviets poured a gun built for exactly this nightmare, the PPSH-41, with a rate of fire over 900 rounds per minute, and a 71-round drum magazine. In a stairwell, that is not a firearm. That is a wall of lead moving toward you. The Soviets equipped entire assault companies with nothing else. And they could, because the PPSH was stamped from cheap steel and finished with a plain wooden stock, so simple that ordinary workshops could build it. Around 6 million were made. That is more than every other gun on this list combined. It fired in frost that froze other weapons solid, and its bottled pistol round flew faster and flatter than the German 9mm. And now, the payoff from the beginning of this video. German soldiers prized captured PPSH-41 so highly that the Wehrmacht officially adopted the trophy weapon as the MP-41R, converted thousands to fire German 9mm ammunition, and printed German-language manuals so its men could fight with the enemy's gun. An army teaching its soldiers to use the other side's weapon. There is no higher compliment in war. The PPSH-41 was not elegant. It was present, in millions of frozen hands, roaring when everything else went silent. That is what best means. A submachine gun was always a promise. When the enemy is close enough to hear him breathe, this gun speaks first. The Type 100 broke that promise. The Sten broke it in Prague, 3 feet from Heydrich. Though Heydrich died anyway, torn open by a grenade thrown seconds after Gabčík's gun failed. The PPSH-41 kept that promise 6 million times over. 3 weeks after his sten jammed, Józef Gabčík died in a Prague church crypt, holding off hundreds of SS troops with the handful of men beside him. He died knowing the mission had succeeded, even though the gun had failed. The gun failed him. The man did not.